Mass Media.
You're listening to Unseen Impact, where stories of injury become conversations about recovery and justice.
Welcome back to Unseen Impact, the podcast where we explore the deeper and often hidden consequences of trauma, injury, and injustice, and the ways we can rebuild lives and dignity afterward. I'm Rory Pendergast, attorney at Rory Law. Today, I'm honored to be joined by Dr. Clark Clipson, a licensed psychologist and neuropsychologist with more than 4 decades of experience. Dr. Clipson has conducted over 4,300 evaluations in his career, many of them in the context of legal, medical, and educational systems. He's testified in courtrooms across the country, trained the next generation of psychologists, and served as a trusted consultant to institutions ranging from the California Judicial Council to the U.S. Marine Corps JAG. His work sheds light on the intersection of psychology, trauma, and justice in ways few others can. Today, we'll be talking about the emotional and psychological toll of personal injury, especially how it can lead to isolation and depression, and what that means in the context of how we think about recovery, identity, and even our country's founding promise, the pursuit of happiness. Well, Dr. Clipson, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Roy.
What I wanted to kind of look at, you've been doing this for over 40 years, right?
Yes.
All right. And so kind of what was it about this field that got you into it?
Well, a lot of it was personal. A lot of it was growing up with a mother who had bipolar disorder. And as a kid, trying to figure out how to navigate her mood swings and suicidal behaviors and all that kind of stuff. But then as I got older, when I was in college, I worked for a place called Hassel House. This was the 70s, right? And it was a crisis intervention house. And we worked with people who were heroin addicts in Durham, North Carolina. And we would go to where they were and talk to them and try to hook them up to services, get them into methadone clinics, that kind of thing. And after that, I went and worked for the psychiatric unit at Duke Hospital and just became fascinated by the ways that trauma in particular and biology contribute to mental health kinds of issues.
Yeah, that's a little heavier than most people have to deal with in their childhood and getting into adulthood.
Yeah.
So then, wow. Yeah. So you go from working at Duke to then going to school for it.
Yes.
And then how did you get to San Diego?
Well, if you're going to spend 4 years in graduate school, I didn't want to end up in Nebraska. So I wanted to come someplace that would be a, fun place to live.
Yeah.
So I looked at Vermont and Hawaii and California, and San Diego turned out to be the best fit.
And then, so your practice has been here for the past 40 some odd years.
Yes.
That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. So then you know something about trauma and its impact on mental health.
Yes. I mean, certainly some of the experiences I had with my mother were traumatic. But also when I started working at Duke Hospital, there were I remember there was a case that I had of a man who had fought in World War II. He had been part of the D-Day invasion. He had, his entire platoon was wiped out. And at one point a German tank had run over his legs, and he could walk. He was fine. Lived out the rest of his work life fine. When he retired, all of a sudden he had developed paralysis in his legs.
Really?
Mm-hmm. And he couldn't move anymore. And I watched as the doctors worked through his trauma and helped him remember this experience of the German tank running over his legs while the rest of his platoon was being wiped out. And as he processed the trauma, his ability to walk came back.
It came back.
Mm-hmm. So those were the kind of things that really got me interested in trauma.
Oh, my goodness. So then that's wild. So is all kind of this repressed sort of memory that just finally came out when essentially he had his life was in a position where it could just come out then?
Well, yeah. I mean, like a lot of men, one of the ways we cope is by staying busy, distracting ourselves. And work provides a great way to do that. I forget what this guy did for a living, but he worked 20 hours a day. I mean, he worked all the time, 7 days a week. And when he retired, all of a sudden he didn't have that anymore. And so that way of avoiding the pain just came flooding back.
So it's an interesting word you say, avoiding, because what I see from the personal injury context is, of course, not nearly as severe as that or as intense as that. But, it's inconvenient to have an injury. It's inconvenient to have trauma.
Yes.
And so you get a lot of people who are, for a lack of a better term, for the layman's term, of just in denial. And I don't know if it's denial or just hoping that it's going to be better, right?
Yeah, and it's probably a little of both. I mean, we all want to do the stuff we want to do.
Yeah.
And when physical limitations or psychological limitations get in the way of that, we just act like they're not there.
Yeah. And so then this guy could have he could just act like it's not there, and then it pops up all this time. That's so fascinating because in the personal injury context, I can see that happening. And so from what I can see is that as long as somebody's busy, they can deal with something or not deal with it.
Exactly. So they can be busy. They can be staying high is another common way to cope with it. They can get into gambling. They can get into compulsive sex. There are a lot of different avenues for avoiding.
Okay. So then let me ask you this one. In this with your 40 years of experience in this, what would you say are some of the most misunderstood items when it comes to trauma and its impact on mental health?
Well, there are a lot of, I think, common kinds of things that happen. People often get depressed. They suffer from anxiety. What's less seen are feelings of shame that come with a loss of self-worth. For men in particular, when they've suffered some sort of emotional or brain-related trauma and they're unable to work, that's a huge avenue that's cut off from, that provides a sense of meaning and purpose in their lives on the one hand, but it also provides them with a sense of social connection and belongingness on another. Their sense of identity is often overly tied into work in a way that is not necessarily true for women. For many women, work is a central purpose in their lives, but for men, we're just routinely socialized over and over again. What are you going to be when you grow up? The first question people ask you, what do you do for a living?
Yeah.
They don't ask you, what do you like to do for fun?
Yeah.
So it's just a central thing. And when a physical or emotional injury gets in the way, men often don't know what to do with that.
Yeah. Okay. And so, I mean, from what I've seen too, personally and then just professionally seen from clients, is you get this sort of social network in your work. And then regardless of the pecking order of where you're at, you're fulfilling a duty. And it's this social duty that you're able to, hey, I get to show up. I got people above me, below me, relying on me. I am, even if I'm a cog in this wheel, I am helping it turn. Yes. And when you can no longer do that, it can lead to isolation, right?
Absolutely. Men don't tend to pick up the phone and call each other and just, hey, how you doing? My wife does that all the time. I don't do it.
Yeah.
I meet friends through work, through my other hobbies and activities that I like. But we do things together. That's what men do. And if you're injured and you can't do those things, then you're cut off.
So it's interesting that you say shame, because it's kind of this funny thing where you have trauma, which can lead to other emotional aspects.
Yes.
And then shame comes from it. Tell me about that.
So a lot of times men will feel like, if I can't do the job that I'm supposed to do, if I can't provide for my family, then there's a component that goes with that, which is, I'm not a man.
Yeah.
And that's something we do to ourselves, because we've been taught that our ability to provide and serve that kind of function is a crucial part of who we are as men. And so that's where the sense of shame comes. I'm not a man if I can't do these things. So
then there must be a ripple effect throughout the entire kind of social structure, right? So with its family, spouses, children, any sort of group that they belong to, work, religious groups, church, stuff like that, right?
Exactly. So there may be physical barriers, mobility issues that keep them from getting involved. There could also be the fear of how am I going to be treated if I can't participate in the conversation like all my coworkers can because I don't know what's going on anymore, or I don't know the inside jokes.
Oh, because you're not there for that time.
Exactly.
So it's not just about being plugged in. It's about being plugged in and constantly there.
Yes.
So, and what I have seen is, hey, it's for, even for the unseen aspect of the emotional aspect that comes from trauma. If you have a catastrophic injury, I think that those of us who are not suffering that can really see what it is.
Sure.
What I've seen as well is even smaller impacts. So, for instance, let's say you have somebody who, maybe they're living on the fence of life, but they're doing it.
Yeah.
They're showing up. They're getting their kids to school. They're showing up at work. They're enjoying themselves, but they're still kind of on the fence. You have one even minor sort of something that happens to them, and it just throws them off.
Yes.
From a psychological standpoint, what happens to that person?
Well, oftentimes, again, that sense of shame and I'm not living up to what I'm supposed to be doing kicks in. They have trouble reaching out for help. Okay. So they feel embarrassed, like I can't go to my friends, my family, my siblings and say, hey, I need a place to stay, or can you loan me some money to get through this?
Yeah.
And so they would rather suffer and see things fall apart than reach out.
That's so sad.
It is.
What is it emotionally or biologically that makes us do that?
Well, I think emotionally, we're taught to, especially in this country, we're taught to be self-sufficient and independent. And that's a value that is not shared by every culture.
Yeah.
And there's some things that are good about being self-sufficient and independent, but there's some real limitations to it as well. And when you live in a society that's not that way, that's more community-oriented perhaps, then you may feel like you don't get enough privacy, but you have a safety net that doesn't necessarily exist in our society.
You have almost like you have this built-in boat.
Yeah.
That no matter what happens to you, you're always flowing with that boat.
Exactly.
Okay. And there's some very interesting things, some connections to our society and kind of our founding that I want to talk about. But one thing that I'm kind of curious about is, so we spent the past 10 minutes or so talking about the impact on men and have kind of touched a little bit on women. But so what is that sort of emotional trauma that comes from, or the emotional impact that comes from trauma that women might suffer?
Well, for women, I think there's a fear of being judged, of being blamed for things that they didn't cause.
Yeah.
But there's a tendency for women as a group to say, well, what did I do? Yeah. What's wrong with me, or why me?
Yeah.
Those kinds of things that men do too, but not as much. For women, there's also, I think, a sense of they also struggle with shame.
Yeah.
You think of the Scarlet Letter as being this sort of classic way of demonstrating that.
Yeah.
But the sense of, I'm not going to be liked or lovable anymore because of what happened to me.
Yeah. Yeah. That's wild. So, one of the things that I'm curious and I think most people now, post-pandemic, I mean, here we are 5 years later, and for all of us who had to live through it, for those who had kids who were at kind of formidable ages, who seeing what's happened to those kids now kind of coming out of it, I think that people today have a much better understanding of what isolation is and how terrible it is.
Yes.
But so how is it that we make the connection between even even a fender bender or some sort of trauma from a car crash, a motorcycle crash, a slip and fall or something, to where we're isolated. If you're explaining to a patient that doesn't necessarily see those connections,
yes,
what sort of steps are you taking to describe that, to kind of show the pathway?
Yeah. So from the accident to the isolation, there are 3 different things to look at. So you've got the emotional, you've got the cognitive, and you've got the physical.
Yeah.
And so from a physical point of view, there may be physical injuries that limit mobility.
Pain.
Exactly. Pain, which colors everything, causes fatigue, depression, a sense of hopelessness. You can't concentrate and focus attention if you're in pain.
Yeah.
Pain can take over a person's life.
Yeah.
And paints everything black. Then emotionally, again, if you're cut off from being able to live the life you want to live, be involved with your family and work and the things you're interested in, that's a loss. You may become afraid that these bad things that happen to you are going to happen to you again. So you create a sense of anxiety or post-traumatic stress. And then cognitively as well, you can have difficulties forming new memories with reasoning and problem solving that weren't there before.
So would that be it's biological, right?
Yes.
So it's going to be a physical barrier.
Exactly.
So physically.
Yeah. So yeah, if you have post-traumatic stress, for example, you have difficulty forming new memories. Your amygdala, which is the part of the brain that processes emotions, is in a constant state of hyperarousal. So every little thing that happens, you overreact to it.
And that's chemicals coming from the brain and rushing the body.
Exactly.
So, and that's what's kind of wild, because you think about this, you know, it's easy to see in the injury context, it's easy to see a physical injury, right? Somebody falls and they hit their head or they hit their arm, they hit their shoulder.
Yeah.
Well, boom, you have a physical injury. But now from that physical injury, you have this emotional injury, which then the emotional injury becomes physical because it's biological.
Yes. Yeah.
That's kind of wild.
It is.
That's kind of wild.
It's all tied together.
Yeah. Wow. You know, one of the things it kind of makes me think about is I had a case once where this woman, she fell, you know, she was at work. And so she falls and she hurts her left knee.
Yeah.
Had major issues with the left knee. So then all of a sudden, what do you have to do?
Compensate
in favor of the right one. And then so then she overworked her right knee. And then that was related from the context was related to the underlying injury.
Yes.
And so it kind of sounds like that. But again, for us, you can see that. Right. And so but from the emotional aspect, it is, as we're saying, the unseen injury part of it.
Exactly. So when you have brain injuries or emotional injuries, those are the unseen injuries.
Yeah.
Because to the casual observer, you look fine.
Yeah.
You look like everything's good. But then when you talk to someone or spend time with them, the injury becomes more apparent.
So then, and this was going to be my next question, is that so somebody shows up at your door, they sit down on your couch or chair, whatever you have or had. What are you doing to probe to find out? I mean, my doctor, you know, they hit your knee, boom, I got a reflex, there we go. What are you hitting? What tools are you using?
So use 2 primary tools, an interview and psychological testing.
Okay.
So during the interview, it's not just a casual conversation. It's very structured. So there's specific things I want to get at, both historical information as well as things about current functioning.
Okay.
So that I'll ask...
What do you mean by current functioning?
So I'll ask about symptoms. I'll ask about how you think about things, how you process this emotion. What does this mean to you? What are the losses that you're experiencing right now? So it's those kind of pointed questions.
That's all, like, as they say, subjective. That's tough to get.
Exactly.
There's no AI automation with this one.
No.
Yeah.
And some people respond very well to those kind of direct questions because people around them aren't asking those kind of questions. And so it's an opportunity. I'm inviting them to share their pain with me.
Yeah.
And many people will steer away from that. They don't want to hear it, like loved ones. It scares them.
Okay.
And so for some people, that's an avenue they're very willing to take. Other people are reluctant. So we have psychological testing as a separate avenue. So the testing is often more paper and pencil, answering questions on a sheet of paper, looking at ink blots, responding to those, taking cognitive tasks. And some people prefer to reveal themselves more in that way. They're more comfortable doing it.
So after 40 years of doing it, when somebody sits down, do you have a sense whether they're going to be better at or not better, but whether they're going to be more open to the interview with you or to the testing?
That's kind of the cool thing. In 40 years, I have no clue. Mm-hmm. I'm always surprised which avenue people are going to take.
So this is what is so fascinating about it. 40 years experience, more than 40 years experience, and still it's kind of baffling, and it requires deep diving into it.
Well, because I don't know, again, what avenue people are going to be comfortable taking.
Yeah.
And letting me get to know them.
So then, this is kind of wild. Then not to say that I feel hopeless right now for everybody, but what is the hope that people can have to get beyond this?
Well, the hope really is in finding ways to connect.
So let me ask you that one. Finding ways to connect. So if I'm suffering, are you saying finding ways that I can connect with the outside world socially, or is it that I can connect with what is going on with me?
A little bit of both. And they have to kind of occur simultaneously. So if we take the scenario, a person had a full life. Yeah. They were happy with their life. They had the injury. They've become isolated. Mm-hmm. Part of the isolation comes from their avoidance of dealing with things. Yeah. Their denial on the one hand, their wish it'll go away on the other. Yeah. But it also comes from other people pulling back or being pushed away by the person. Yeah. A lot of injured people become more irritable, for example.
Okay.
Harder to be around. Yeah. Or they clam up and just don't talk as much. And other people eventually will sort of give up on them.
Yeah.
But what has to happen is the person needs to share their pain, what they're feeling, what they're thinking. Other people need to become receptive to listening to it.
Okay.
And then if their old avenues of work and being involved with a group of people are no longer there, they need to find new avenues.
Okay. That is heavy. Mm-hmm. And it's not like, hey, you broke your arm and we'll put it in a cast and come back in 6 weeks.
Yeah. No, and I think, for example, of examples of athletes who were stellar, Olympic quality or professional quality athletes who suffered devastating injuries, who then regroup and become involved in Special Olympics as one way of talking about it, or coaching. Finding a new way to do the things that you've always loved to do.
In a positive way.
Yes.
So, this one, what I want to kind of bring it to, because I'm kind of curious, one of the things that I've kind of been thrown around in my head for the past couple of years is, as a personal injury attorney, we're always talking about general damages. Mm-hmm. And what we're doing in this podcast is really about general damages. It's the unseen aspect of it. It's not a lost wage. It's not paying a doctor for a surgery or a broken arm or something like that.
Yeah.
And so, you think about our founding document, where you have Thomas Jefferson saying, the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, which, if you really look back at that, it's a wild, wild statement in this. Mm-hmm. In this, first off, saying, the ruffian bastards in England doing all these things to us, but then this comment. And when I look into it, what I see are general damages in that Jefferson wasn't saying that we're guaranteed happiness.
No.
But we're guaranteed the right to pursue the happiness. And so when I look at what are general damages, it's the opposite of that happiness. And so when you're describing all of this is what I'm seeing. You think about, okay, so a person who, for whatever reason, they're in their social structure, they're happy, they feel fulfilled, and then something is taken away from them.
Exactly.
Do you have any thoughts from the psychological aspect about, you did mention our culture, but those words from Jefferson, the pursuit of happiness, and what happens when we no longer can pursue that, or there's some sort of physical or mental block to that.
Yeah. Well, it is funny because I bought a T-shirt at a national park that's changed that up a little bit. It said, "The pursuit is happiness." and there's a real truth to that, and it fits with this, because if we feel like we can't pursue the things that make us feel like ourselves,
Yeah.
that bring us joy,
Yeah.
then that's the hidden injury.
Yeah.
Because we can't get better at our jobs. We can't be fully present with the people we love because we can't pursue the things that we enjoy.
Well, and for me, what's so sad about it, because seeing it on my side of things, is that, as you're saying, shame gets involved in this. And shame is not a good word, right? When it says, hey, I'm feeling a little shameful today, right? It's not, you don't ever feel good when that word comes up.
Right.
And so, but I think that people, we're told, we're brought up to believe, or whatever, there's no connection made between the founding of this country, meaning pursuing that happiness, and what it means when we're unable to do that.
Right.
And so I think what I'm looking at as well is, and I think you've covered a lot of it, is that, how is it that we can explain that to someone who has suffered trauma, and more importantly, to those around the person who has suffered trauma?
Yeah, I think that people around the traumatized person have also suffered a loss.
Mm-hmm.
And that's often not recognized either. But the person that they used to enjoy in certain ways or spend time with, or who provided for them certain things, they've lost that too.
And the worst part is that you've lost it, maybe not necessarily completely, but in little bits and pieces.
Exactly.
And it's like a game of Jenga, right? You pull out enough cubes and it falls.
Exactly. Yeah, and there's enough of the person still there.
Yeah.
But it's different. And so everybody around you has to adjust as well. And so together, people have to find a new way to connect.
Okay.
It's kind of like if you've taken a boat and it's been damaged, you can get that boat back in the water, but you might have to redesign it.
We'll be right back with more insights from the front lines of healing, advocacy, and accountability. Stay with us.
Hi there, I'm Charity Jen, and I've got something special for you. I recently flew to Seattle, yes, literally flew, to attend the AFP Icon Conference. That's the Association of Fundraising Professionals' biggest annual gathering. And while I was there, I recorded a series of one-on-one interviews for From the Nest with some of the most inspiring leaders, vendors, and changemakers I have ever met. These episodes aren't long. They're quick, honest chats, the kind you'd have over coffee, and they're filled with practical wisdom and nonprofit energy. So, if you're looking to grow your impact, sharpen your strategy, or just hear from folks who get it, this series is for you. It's the From the Nest AFP Icon series, where ideas take flight. Listen at charitychen.com/podcast or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey, it's Daniel from Beyond the Doors. We're super excited to be a part of the OLAS Media Network, recording right here in San Diego, alongside some amazing podcasts. There's a host of wonderful shows from all types of genres. Basically, like real estate, there's a little something for all walks of life. You won't want to miss it. So head over to olasmedia.com or wherever you get your podcasts. Don't forget to follow or subscribe while you're there. Now, let's get back to the show.
So as part of your job as well, you've gone in, you've had a lot of forensic work. I've had you as an expert. How is it that you or the injured victim or the attorney is able to show this sort of unseen trauma in the legal setting?
Well, I think that we demonstrate it through what the person is able to tell us. We demonstrate it by comparing their test results to a standardized sample, so that you can see them in relation to a normative group of people.
Yeah.
And
are we all? Is there such a thing?
From a statistical point of view, there is. From a more conventional point of view, I'm kind of glad nobody's normal.
Yeah,
it makes life a lot more interesting.
Yeah.
And leaves the bar where we can all attain it. But I think that we use that kind of scientific way of showing how this person is different from the norm, statistical norm.
Okay.
And that, I think, makes a a strong impression.
Now, let me ask you from the forensic side of things, because what I'm hearing is and from what I've seen in my own practice, it's if I want to know how somebody's doing, I don't ask them. The victim is the worst person to ask. I ask those around them. And then I see, reading a bunch of brain injury books, a bunch of trauma books, and the books are written for family.
Yeah.
Family members of the trauma victim. So how are you able to, on the forensic side, incorporate, whether you've talked to the family, gotten statements from the family, how are you able to, first off, hear from the friends and family, and then incorporate that into what you do to show?
Well, that's the third. We talked first about the interview and the psychological testing.
Yeah.
The other part of a forensic evaluation is what we would call third-party information.
Okay.
So this is medical records, psychological records, work records, school records, but also talking to people who've known the person before and after the injury.
Your before and after witnesses.
Exactly. And so when you talk to 4 or 5 people who know the person well, and you begin to see consistency in the stories, this is what he was like before, this is what's going on now, then that becomes another important, compelling piece of evidence.
And is there any suggestions you have for the family members? For the friends and family members?
Yes. I mean, I think for the friends and family, it's remembering that you don't need to do anything special other than just be there, stay involved, interact at whatever level you can. Encourage, don't say, how are you doing in general? How are you doing right now? That's the kind of question that injured and people who are struggling can relate to. How are you?
That's a scary question.
It's a very scary question.
I think it's a scary question to ask because you know what you might get.
Yeah, you may get, I feel like jumping off a building today. Or I feel like crap today.
Yeah.
But if that's where the person is starting, if you can be there with that person and encourage them to talk about it, it will change.
It's connection, human connection.
Absolutely.
So, and that's my next point. What I was fascinated about, somebody had shared something on LinkedIn about some Harvard Business Journal review talking about the top uses of AI in 2025. And last year it was really, really nerdy and AIE, right? For the top one. But this one, it had to do with, here, I got to get it right, companionship and therapy. So this is wild. For generative AI in the United States, the top use is going to be about companionship and therapy.
Yeah.
As a psychologist, what do you think of that?
Well, I think it's a reflection of our culture in general and of our culture in this particular point in time. We are desperate for connection. It's the fundamental part of being human. And yet, in our society, which doesn't necessarily provide a lot of positive support for connection, people flock to fringy political and religious stuff, anything to feel a sense of connection, regardless of what's going on in the movement. AI seems to offer the illusion of connection, like social media offers the illusion of connection.
Do you think that it could actually offer connection?
Certainly not as it is now.
Yeah.
I mean, I play around with this stuff because I'm curious, and people are doing it. And I want to see what it's like. It's entertaining.
Yeah.
It's kind of fascinating because robots are a fascinating thing, and you can kind of see it headed there. But there's, if you ever saw the movie, I think it was called Her.
Yes, I was just going to yes.
Yeah. And so this guy has fallen in love with this voice. And
lovely voice.
I mean, everybody watching the movie falls in love with her. And then you realize towards the end of the movie that she's been doing this with thousands of people simultaneously. That's what robots do. There's no emotional connection.
Yeah.
And that's the part that can never be done by AI.
So what we need more is less therapy and AI and more trivia nights at your local establishments.
Hey, because you figure out if you're into the same friends trivia night, then that's a way you start a connection.
It's kind of wild. Before we kind of conclude this, one thing I know that you have had a big change in your life recently, right?
Yeah.
So after how many years? 43 years?
Yeah.
43 years, over 4,000 forensic interviews, all sorts of other accolades, all sorts of other things. You have retired from the main practice.
As of 2 weeks ago, yes.
As of 2 weeks ago. And you're here, so again, I thank you. But so tell me, what are you doing right now?
I am pursuing a lifelong interest in songwriting.
Okay, so tell me about that.
So I've played in bands since I was 13, started writing songs when I was 17, and have always loved it, but had to accept early on I wasn't going to be Elton John. And I didn't. I saw my friends.
Too tall.
Exactly. And, I saw my friends just playing in bars 6 nights a week and not getting anywhere. And so decided to do something different.
Yeah.
But the passion for it never left. And now I'm in a place where I can do it and not worry about making a living at it.
So then, and that's kind of an interesting thing. So do you see a connection between, your worlds, your past life as a psychologist and your current life as a musician?
Very much so. Writing music for me is a very healing thing. It's a way of self-discovery. Songwriters often talk about they're addressing themselves to the world and sort of saying, this is who I am. But they do it in a way, effective songwriters do it in a way so that other people can relate to it. Yeah. Oh, you're telling my story.
There's a connection.
Exactly.
Cat Stevens' father and son, right?
Oh, absolutely.
I was just talking with somebody about some probate matter, and it was like the father died, the son's mad because he got nothing, but, all these sort of things happen.
Yeah.
And it's just like, I was just thought of it. Here's this song from the 60s.
Sure.
So then what do you see yourself having kind of the music for emotional healing impact?
Yeah. I mean, some of the songs I write have nothing to do with healing.
Yeah.
They're just fun songs. Yeah. Or they're political songs, but other songs are very much directed towards healing.
Yeah.
As an example, I wrote a song called Nothing Left to Say about a guy, it's written from the woman's point of view, living with a man who suffered trauma early in his life, and he can never talk about it, and what that's kind of like for her.
So in your experience, have you seen a song like that, either, I suppose, the hope having the man be able to open up in some sense, and then maybe some understanding from the woman?
Exactly. I mean, so when the feedback I get about that song in particular is one of, it helped me understand him. And then there's a point in the song where the chorus changes. So it's not just, I can't get in touch with my feelings, but there's a way in which the man does open up.
Okay.
And so there's a more positive end of the song.
So then is there anything that you can do now that kind of pushes that out? Because really, if somebody's listening to a song, I don't want to say it's passive from your perspective, because you've putting it, I should say this, once you've written it and it's out there.
Yes.
It's just, you're sleeping, you're drinking coffee, you're at a podcast, you're doing something else, and somebody could listen to that. So passive in that sense.
Yeah.
Is there something that you can do or you have plans of doing to kind of push that out there, to kind of make that connection?
Yeah, well, I'm learning a lot about marketing, for one thing. I'm learning that music doesn't just come to people. There's a lot of marketing behind every song we ever hear.
Yeah.
But I'm also thinking about trying to combine this passion for music and my mental health history into things like a YouTube channel or whatever that promotes that kind of dialogue and connection and healing through music.
Well, let me tell you this. I want to thank you so much for coming here. This has been fantastic. Just for me personally, as a personal injury attorney, doing this for 16 some odd years, this is what is a wild part of it that I love being able to get out there. So thank you for coming.
Sure.
But before we go, so YouTube not yet, but where can we find you for your musical healing or just music?
Any place you listen to music, just type in Clark Clipson. I'm on Spotify, Apple, YouTube. So I'm easy to find.
All right. Well, hey, thank you. And I hope that we have more conversations in your retirement time to come.
Thank you so much for having me. It's fun.
Now it's time for the Myths and Facts segment of our podcast, where we separate truth from fiction. There's a lot of information out there, and not all of it is accurate. So we're here to set the record straight with real facts from your trusted attorney. Let's dive in. Myth versus fact. The emotional impact of personal injury. Myth. Once the physical injuries heal, people go back to normal. Fact. Physical recovery is just one part of the journey. Many clients struggle long after their bodies heal with depression, anxiety, and loss of identity. Just because the cast is off doesn't mean the damage is gone. Once the physical injuries heal, people go back to normal. Fact. Physical recovery is just one part of the journey. Many clients struggle long after their bodies heal with depression, anxiety, and loss of identity. Just because the cast is off doesn't mean the damage is gone. Emotional trauma can last longer and go untreated if it's not acknowledged. Myth. Isolation after an injury is just a personal problem. It's not something lawyers need to worry about. Fact. Isolation is often a direct consequence of injury, especially when somebody can't return to work or social life. As a personal injury lawyer, I see this all the time, and it matters in court. Emotional harm is real harm, and it should be part of every case strategy when seeking justice. Myth. The legal system is only about money, not about people's lives or happiness. Fact. Personal injury law exists to restore what was lost, physically, financially, emotionally. At its core, it's about helping people reclaim their lives, dignity, and the pursuit of happiness. The legal system, when it works right, can recognize the full human cost of injury, not just the dollar amount. That's it for this episode of Unseen Impact. A huge thank you to Dr. Clark Clipson for sharing his insight and decades of experience with us. I think his perspective reminds us that personal injury doesn't just leave physical scars. It can fracture identity, purpose, and connection. If you or someone you love is navigating the emotional aftermath of trauma, know that you're not alone. Recovery isn't just about treatment. It's about being seen, heard, and supported. You've been listening to Unseen Impact. If you like today's episode, make sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and leave us a review. It really helps others find the show. For more stories, updates, and information on legal-related topics, follow us on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at Rory Law Firm. You can also learn more about our work or book a free consultation with us at rorylaw.com. Thanks for being part of this conversation. Remember, justice isn't just about what happens in court. It's about what happens after. I'm Rory Pendergast from Rory Law. See you next time.
Thanks for tuning in to Unseen Impact with Rory Pendergast. Please follow, subscribe, and maybe share this episode with someone who's walking their own path to recovery or justice. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn at Rory Law Firm. To learn more about legal services or get in touch, visit rorylaw.com. Unseen Impact is recorded in San Diego, California, and proudly produced by OLAS Media, an IVC media company.